Hello, Canvassers, and welcome for joining our Yes You Canvas workshop. This is a recording of the session and hope you enjoy it. As we start going through this workshop, I will be going through how to log into the canvassing app that we use on your smartphone. So you might want to pull out your smartphone and have it with you as you listen to this workshop. So we are organized by the Bay Area Coalition. We're a coalition of almost 50 grassroots organizations and a core team of experienced organizing leaders and partners. We use canvassing, voter registration, and phone banks to turn out voters. And to support our volunteers, we have a speaker series, training sessions such as this one, and a messaging library. I'm Cecilia Manalga, and I'm one of the co-founders along with 5 other partners, and I look forward to having this conversation with you. Although we are the Bay Area Coalition, this workshop is intended for all California canvassers. So whether you're in Central Valley, Northern, or Southern California, this is intended for you. So the goal of today's workshop is to talk about what to expect when you canvass. And as an aside, when we start this conversation, it's totally okay to be nervous or hesitant when you first start. I've done a lot of canvassing over the years, and I still have to take a deep breath before my first door knock. So what does canvassing look like? Thought I would share a short 2-minute video of what canvassing looks like in pictures. So let me share my screen here. One moment.
You're broken down and tired of living life on the merry-go-round, and you can't find a fighter, but I see it in you, so we gon' walk it out. Move mountains, we gon' walk it out and move mountains. And I'll rise like the day. I'll rise up, I'll rise unafraid. I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. And I'll rise up, I like the waves. I'll rise up, in spite of the ache. I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. The silence isn't quiet, and it feels like it's getting hard to breathe. And I know you feel like dying, but I promise we'll take the world to its feet. Move mountains, bring it to its feet. Move mountains. And I'll rise up, I'll rise like the day. I'll rise up, I'll rise unafraid. I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that video because that's what it looks like to canvass. So I just want to make one reminder as well, is that when you arrive at your canvassing staging location, they will also provide a training session, although it will be much more abbreviated than what we're going to go through in this workshop today. So before I start talking about your canvassing day, let's talk a little bit about just some general canvassing information. So knocking on doors is the most important tool to increase voter turnout. Studies show that it increases turnout by upwards of 9 to 12 percentage points. And since many elections are won or lost by about 2 voters per neighborhood, that makes a big difference. But let's first start with some canvassing terminology that you'll hear. The canvass organizers will provide the volunteers, that's you, with PDI, Universe, Turf, and Lit. I don't know about you, but those are words that I really never use in my day-to-day life. So what do they mean? PDI is a canvassing app on your smartphone. In the old days, we used to have to carry around paper lists. We don't do that anymore. And you'll receive a login email and password to sign into the PDI app when you arrive at your staging location. I'll also give you a training site as well that you can get into and play around with a little bit later. So that's PDI. The universe, that is the population we are canvassing. Right now, we're canvassing, since we're in get out the vote time, 2 weeks before the election, we're canvassing voters who have said that they support the candidates, and they also may still be canvassing voters who we have not been able to reach yet. But your particular canvas will vary. Some questions that you might be asking yourself is, what about all those Republicans? I don't really want to talk to them. You'll rarely encounter Republicans, although you might find some here or there. But our goal is always to talk to Democrats or voters sharing our democratic values. You may encounter a Republican who will welcome a good conversation, but for anyone else, and definitely any of the MAGAs, smile, wish them a good day, and move on to the next door. So that's the universe. Then there's the turf, and the turf cuts that universe into walkable areas. It's usually around 50 homes, plus or minus. And then there's lit. That's just short for literature. And that is provided by the California Democrats or the candidates. Sometimes they might give you some stickers or other voting cards. And they'll tell you at the start of the canvass what you should leave at all the doors if no one is home, or what is only left with conversations. One thing to remember though, never leave lit in mailboxes. That is the one illegal thing. You can close it into the screen door or wedge it between the door handle and the door jamb. You have to get a little bit creative here, but never leave lit in mailboxes. So when you and your partner get your turf, know that you may only talk to around 20, maybe 25% of your turf. You might get commitments from 1 or 2 people, but remember the power of one voter at a time, and that elections are often won or lost by 2 voters per neighborhood. So you're still making a difference. Some other thoughts. Don't take anything personally. If someone is rude or grumpy, wish them a good day and move on. And by the way, list them as not home. They may just be having a really bad day. Who knows? The dog may have just thrown up on their carpet. They burned something on the stove. And we want to go back. And perhaps the next time they will be having a better day when someone knocks again. You don't have to get everything perfect. By the way, it's okay to tell the voter that you're new to this work, and that will often start a really good conversation. You also don't have to know all the answers. It's okay to say you don't know, but that you share the values of the candidate or the Democratic Party. Think of it as you're meeting your new friend at the door, so be yourself. Don't read from the script, that's actually really boring. Smile, be genuinely curious about what they have to say. Stay positive, and know why you're doing this. Oftentimes that helps start with sharing your common values. Another question you might be thinking about is, what about all those no solicitor signs? The good news is we're not selling anything. But if you do see any cues that make you feel unsafe, such as guns or violence, skip that house and text that information to your staging leader. And of course, take a break when you need one. So what should you expect when you start your canvassing day? Well, you arrive at your staging location. What have you brought with you? Definitely your smartphone, or you can use a tablet if you prefer, and a charger. Dress comfortably and in layers. Oftentimes it's the fall weather now. It's a little cool in the morning. Really comfortable walking shoes. You're going to be getting your steps in. And don't forget a sun hat. Oftentimes the staging location will have water, snacks, sunscreen, bug spray, but you might want to bring some of your own as well. So let's talk for just a moment about the weather. Rain, we're not having heat as much right now in the fall. But the good news is voters are home when the weather is not perfect. And that means you get to have more conversations. They're so much more welcoming and receptive in bad weather. They oftentimes will offer you water, lemonade. When it's hot out, sometimes they'll offer you popsicles. So just know that the bad weather means more conversations. So when you arrive at the staging location, you'll be greeted by the organizers. Every canvas is a little bit different, but generally it includes you sign in with the organizers. The organizer will assign you and your partner a PDI turf with the email login and password, and we'll talk about PDI in just a minute. No worries if you come by yourself. Many volunteers do arrive by themselves, and we'll introduce you to a partner. The organizers will provide you a clipboard, a pen, and lit, and help you get logged into PDI, and they may offer you some water, snacks, or some other comfort items. So once you have your assigned PDI turf with the email login and password, log in right away and start to plan how you're going to canvas with your partner. And if you've actually just met your partner, you want to get to know each other, say hello. But start with talking about, how you're going to drive there. Are you going to drive there together? Are you going to drive there in separate cars? Where are you going to park? Where are you going to start your turf? Do you feel more comfortable starting out going together to each of the doors? And only when and if you feel comfortable, you may want to split up houses while still staying within sight of each other, such as every other house or opposite sides of the street. And then you might want to take a few moments to practice your conversation with your partner. It's usually about 10-15 minutes after you arrive, the staging leader will gather everyone together for a short 10-15 minute training session. This won't be in nearly as much detail as we're talking about here, but we'll definitely include any specific questions or talking points that the California Democrats or the campaign want you to include. And then after a short training, everyone usually takes a picture of the fabulous canvassers making a difference. And then quick bio stop, and it's time to start canvassing. Keep in touch with your staging leader as the day goes on. If you have any questions, you're having difficulty with PDI, you don't know how to answer a question that a voter had, and the staging leader will have told you when to return at the end of the day, and then you can come back and share your experiences with others. But let's start talking about knocking on the doors and talking to voters, because we need to have meaningful conversations that they will remember. So door knocking should always be about quality conversations, not the number of doors knocked. I remember so vividly some of my canvassing conversations where we shared our values, we talked about our families, what we're looking for in the future, what we were concerned about. I do sometimes wonder if those voters remember our conversations as much as I do. I hope they do. The canvassing leaders will provide you a formal script. I'll be honest, it's often stilted and robotic, so make the words your own. You'll first knock on the door, smile, be friendly. Might want to start with some pleasantries when they open the door. The most important part of the conversation is to listen. I had a canvasser describe it the other day as in a way that you are the voter's secretary or their note taker. And voters will listen to what you have to say better after they have been heard and they feel respected. Listen to them compassionately. Some of their issues will really touch your soul. In the link tree that you will also get, there are some handy phrases that you can use to elicit conversation. But remember, silence is your friend. Um, if you ask a question, count to 10, silently, of course, and oftentimes they will respond. The best phrase of all is, tell me more about that. I'm going to give you an example that a canvasser gave me. This is several months ago now. And he went to the door, and there was a big guy that answered the door. And he said, "We don't vote in this house." And he had his arms crossed. He was a big guy, not looking very friendly. And the canvasser was kind of stumped and was like, "Oh, not sure how to respond to this." But he remembered this phrase, and he said, "Tell me more about that." And he paused for 10 seconds. He sort of described it as the longest 10 seconds of his life. And the guy responded and said, "We don't vote because I'm a felon." Well, felons can vote in California. So at the time, he was able to fill out a voter registration form. So they sat down and they filled it out. While they were filling it out, they started talking about the candidate, which happened to be Rudy Salas. By the end of the conversation of filling out the voter registration form, he was a newly registered voter. He was asked for a yard sign to put in his front yard for Rudy Salas, and he's now volunteering for Rudy Salas. So think of the power of just saying, tell me more about that. But you do have to start the conversation. So I'm going to give you some ideas, but again, make the words your own. I've heard of many variations of these words as there are canvassers. Hi, my name is Cecilia, and I'm a volunteer with Rudy Salas and the California Democrats. Rudy is running for Congress, and he's asked us to talk to every voter in his district because he wants to know what's important to you. Like if you were in charge, you could change one or two things. What would they be? Remember, the most important part of the conversation is to listen with your complete focus and respect. You might not even find out their name until after you've listened. And using their issues, say why you're volunteering for Rudy Salas, why you're excited about him. And most importantly, make the ask. Can I put you down as a supporter of Rudy Salas? We're now in the 2 weeks before election. We're now canvassing after the ballots have been dropped. The voters have received their ballots in the mail. So the conversation will be very focused for some of your voters about turning out the vote and not just simply asking them questions. You still want to listen to the voter first, but either acknowledge or ask the question, can we count on you to vote for Rudy Salas for Congress? And if the answer is yes, thank them for being a voter and for their support, and transition to, do you plan to vote by mail or drop box or vote in person? They will often say, oh, I've already voted, and try and brush you off, which is kind of code for getting you off their front porch. But don't leave it at that. You need to start to engage them because we have got to get that ballot from their kitchen counter into the drop box or mailbox. Oh, thank you so much for being a voter. I'm curious, particularly if we're visiting your neighbors, how did you turn in your ballot? Did you use a drop box or the mail? Chances are very high that they will admit it's still on their kitchen counter and they haven't quite gotten it to the mailbox or the drop box, or maybe they haven't even filled it out yet. And then you can now start to talk to them about how they're going to vote, even to the point of helping them to fill out their ballot and walking them to their mailbox. I had a canvasser this past weekend who actually had a family of 4. They sat down, they all filled out their ballot, and they actually walked to the mailbox together and took pictures even of them putting it in the mailbox. Anything to get that ballot from their kitchen counter to either the drop box or mailbox. You might have some voting questions that you can't answer, including I did not receive my ballot, and refer them to the hotline number that will be given to you by the staging leader. So that's having the conversations. And then we've been talking about PDI. But the important part is you need to be able to use PDI. So let's get you logged in, and I'm going to walk through how to use the app. Um, and I'm going to share my screen here for a moment. On just a moment here. Okay, so this first page that you have here, these are the two QR codes, whether you have an Apple or an Android. And when you open it up, you need to have it so it's got the little black box around the PDI icon. There was an old one that had a white background, so you do not want to use that. So this is the PDI Connect. By the way, you can also go to your App Store or Play Store and download PDI Connect. Then when you first open the app, you're going to see something that looks like just a welcoming sort of slide. We're going to go over all of this together so you can skip to login. And then you may also get a PDI Basics that sort of walks you through. Where I'm going to, this slide deck will take you through all of that so you can click close on that. And then what you will get to after you get through those welcoming slides, you will get to a slide that looks similar to this, which has got a white background with the PDI logo on top. And let's log into a training site so you can start to play with this. We can use training11@cadem.org and the password of 1234. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me, and we are happy to, we will have someone reach out to you and help you with getting into PDI. And then click login. And that will take you to something that looks like this. This is your turf assignment. And there's sort of a white box here. It's right now it's in red, but there's not a red on your phone, of course. But you just click on that white area up there, and that will take you to something that looks like this. It'll have street list, map view, and audit list at the top. These are all the houses that you are that you have on your turf. And if you can tap on any of the bubbles, it'll pop up a little rectangular white box that has the street address and the number of people on it. But what are some of these colors here? What does this mean? So red, by the way, if there's anyone listening to this that is colorblind, there is a colorblind option for PDI as well. So the ones in red, those are the ones that are fully canvassed. Everything's done on those. If they're yellow, that means the house has been visited, but one or more of the targeted voters wasn't home. And then green, those are the houses that you still have on your turf that you want to knock on those doors. Again, I usually start with the map view first. Because you can sort of orients me as to where I am. So for example, on what I'm looking at here, I might look at this and say, well, I will park my car at the corner of like Taft Street and Jeanette Way, and we'll start our canvas right in this area up here. Sort of orients me to where I am. But when I get to an actual street, it's usually a good idea to go to street list. And the reason for that is that PDI and GPS don't always talk nicely to each other. And they sometimes put houses in like really strange places. So when you're actually doing the canvassing, it's best to actually go to the street list. And then you can see any of the streets, and then you can just follow down numerically down the street. And you can see also there's little bars here, the red, yellow, green bars, so you can see which houses you still have left to canvass. And then there's the audit list. Frankly, you rarely use this. Really, the only time you might use it is say you got back to your staging leader and you remembered, oh my goodness, Lisbeth had asked me for a yard sign and I forgot to write down her address. So you would go to this and look up and you can see Elizabeth here. And she lives at 2544 Harvard Street. So you can get her address. Otherwise, you really don't use the audit list at all. Then if you click on any of those bubbles, it'll pop up a screen that looks like this. And this is the view of what the voters are at that house. In this case, there are 3 voters who live there, Amy, Maria, and Ricardo. And what is some of the information that we have about those voters? It shows their, let's look at Maria at first. So Maria is 72 years old. She's female. She's a Democrat. And then there's a VTS. What does that mean? VTS is the number of times Maria has voted in the last 5 elections. So you can see from this that Maria is a regular voter. She always votes. That's as compared to Amy, who is 41, female, Democrat, but she's only voted once in the last 5 elections. So she's a very infrequent voter. So that tells you a little bit about the voters that you are, at whose door you're going to. Then when you go to the door and you knock, ring the bell, and if no one answers the door, then you can click the orange not home button. By the way, oftentimes there's Ring doorbells out there. They can hear you coming on the Ring doorbell, so always remember what you're saying. They are probably listening or could be listening to you as you approach that Ring doorbell. But if they're not home, click not home. And then perhaps you ring the bell, someone answers and they say, oh, Amy, Maria, and Ricardo, they don't live here anymore. They moved. So you would click the blue other no contact, and there's going to be a drop down here, and you can click moved. One item of note here, not home is always the default unless the household or the voter has passed away, has deceased, moved, or there's a language barrier. The reason for that, if you put something like refused or gated, it takes it off the list for us to go back to. And we want to be able to go back to that house, even if it is gated, even if they did refuse. Again, they could be just grumpy. And we want to go back to that house to talk to them. So then when you're talking to the voter, say you're talking to Ricardo here, and he says, oh, I really want to volunteer. You want to make sure that the voters, we have that voters information so that, because if we don't have their contact information, we can't reach back out to them. So at the bottom here, there's 4 little buttons here: survey, comments, add, edit info, and contact history. You would click on add, edit info. This pops up like you can see on the screen here. You can click add details, and then there's going to be it'll pop down where you can add a phone number or add or edit the email address as well. You'll also notice there's a section there for comments, and you'll see this nice big comment section here, and you might think to yourself, oh, I'll write all sorts of information here for the campaign. They're going to be so pleased that I wrote them a story about these voters. Especially in the last couple weeks of an election, no one's going to read that. There is just no time for any of that. So if there's any information that is really important that needs the KDEM, California Democrats, or the campaign's attention, text that issue and contact information to your staging leader so that they can respond to it. Otherwise, they likely are never going to be able to get to reading these comments on PDI. Then you want to have a meaningful conversation with the voter. As when you're at the door and having that meaningful conversation, always a good idea to just have the conversation as a friend that you're meeting for the first time. Definitely don't like have your phone in front of your face. That's actually really kind of off-putting. But have a meaningful conversation. And then when you get back out to the street, then you can fill out the survey. There's really only 2, 3 questions that you're going to have on PDI, so you'll remember those questions and their answers. So there's no need to fill it out. Of course, if they're giving you information about their phone number and or their contact information, you'll want to pull out your phone. But if you're just talking to them just as a one-on-one conversation, just wait until you've left the door to actually begin survey and recording their survey answers. Then once you click begin survey, it'll pop up something like this. And you can click next, next, next to go to each of the questions. One helpful hint is, and this is what I prefer, but it's entirely a personal preference. If you want to see all the questions at once rather than having to click next, 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 go back to where you were with street, map, and audit list. And there's 3 bars at the top. Just click on those 3 bars and it'll pull down a menu with full survey. Turn on that full survey. And then when you pull up the questions, they'll all show up at once. And then you want to click save. And then you have now canvassed a voter. If there was only one person or you finished with a last person on there, you want to click the blue button with finish with this house. If, for example, you talk to one of the people at the house, but you had actually talked to an additional person there, you want to click the green and go back and fill out the information for those other voters as well. So that is using PDI. And again, as we talked about a little bit ago, they will go through a quick training session when you're at your staging location, but it won't be in nearly as much detail at all as what we've been going through here. So let's switch to a little bit about registering voters, because you may occasionally encounter unregistered voters when you're canvassing, particularly as you're talking to whoever answers the door. Oftentimes there'll be new citizens. They could oftentimes be felons, which, remember, felons can register and vote even if they are on parole or probation. They cannot be currently incarcerated. And if you're talking to the door, they're not currently incarcerated. However, in the last 2 weeks before the election, we cannot use paper voter registration forms. But California does have same-day registration, meaning that voters need to go to their elections office or any polling place on election day to register in person. And your staging leader will give you the addresses of those locations where they can go to. So that is how to canvass. Hopefully this was helpful in learning how to canvass. And definitely, if you have any questions on the link tree, we will have other information available to you, and all of this information that was shared with you tonight. And look forward to seeing you out canvassing. Thank you.